Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. Now, what we're looking at is the display for group combat that I introduced in the last video. And as you can see, and as we discussed, it's got all the hit points of the different characters, as well as their portraits. But there might be other information that we want to know. We might want to know, well, I can't remember which one of these has the good attack bonus, and is this guy, does he do 1 to 8 damage, or is it 1 to 6 damage? And how much damage do these enemies do? And what sort of armor are they wearing, and so on. And we might want that sort of information so that we can estimate whether we're likely to win the fight or not, whether we should run away or not. And of course, we could have just coded that information to be displayed on this screen. We could have an extra cell which lists all the information we might need, but there might be quite a bit of information, and of course there's quite a lot of different characters, and we probably want information from all of them, or potentially we want information from all of them. So that might be a bit, things might get a bit crowded. We might have to make the text very small or something in order to fit everything on the screen, and it might prove impossible to do, or it might be possible to do, but look a bit bad and be a bit hard to read. So what we can do instead is what I have done, which is I've used what's called hover text or mouse over text, where when you put the pointer over a picture, sometimes it takes it, there it is, sometimes it takes a while to respond, but if you put your mouse over the different pictures, it gives you the information. So for example, we can see this guy, he's just named enemy 4, but we can see that he's got armor class of 12, attack of +0, and damage of 1 to 6. And then if we look at this character, we can see that she's called She is Brave, and her armor class is 10, and she has +1 attack and does 1 to 8 damage. And so we can fit information on the screen without sacrificing sort of clarity and looking clean and simple, and not giving us information that we might just remember that information. So that's what it looks like. There is a disadvantage that I've found, that sometimes it sort of takes a while to respond. You can be sitting there for a while and it won't come up, but that seems to be a problem with the individual system that you're running. It doesn't seem to be something you can fix with code, as far as I know. So let's have a look at the code that made this possible. So here we are in the program. If you were here yesterday, you'll remember that we added this hearts page to these previously existing pages. We've added a new page called hover text today, and we've still got these 2 pages which I'm keeping isolated from the program for the moment, because they deal with the mechanics of when combat starts. So let's have a look at what we do. There aren't any new variables that are needed to do this, so we can skip that, and we'll go straight to display, and I'll show you the changes that I've made. So we have the top HTML table, which is the one that displays the enemies, and we set y equal to 1, which is a variable for hover text. We're using the convention that we've been using, which is that 0 indicates player characters and 1 indicates enemies. So we set y to 1, and then when we have this loop going from 1 to e, where e is the number of enemies, before we have this cell that prints the picture, which we've changed slightly, and I'll get to that in a second, we include hover text. hover text is the new page. That generates some code which is stored in the variable x, and the change that we've made is that we print x when we're printing the title. So x is just the contents of the hover text. It's just, so in this case it might be enemy, say enemy 3, and then it'll be the details that they have, the armor class, the attack bonus, etc. And we have a print command which prints less than div, div, which is the beginning of a paragraph, title equals, and then we have this top left to bottom right slash and a quote, and that indicates that this character, this quotation character, is part of the string. It's not indicating the end of the string, because the way we indicate the beginning and end of strings is we have quote, string contents, end quote. Well, what if we want to have a quote in there? Well, it'll treat that as the end of the quote. So what we do to get around that is we have slash, or top left to bottom right slash quote, and the program knows to interpret that as, okay, that's not the end of the quote, that is literally that character is part of the string. So that's what that slash quote is. So we print div title equals quote, whatever x is, and then we have another quote. So in other words, whatever's in x is going to be in quotation marks. And then we have this img command, this image command that we discussed in the last video. And that's if the relevant enemy's hit points are greater than 0. And otherwise, we do exactly the same thing. That is exactly the same string, except instead of printing the picture art/awk.png, we're printing art/awkd.png, which is exactly the same picture but with a red X on it to indicate that the awk is dead. So I'll give you an example of what that would look like. It'll be something like this. Div title equals text here. Then it'll be the image. And then that slash div, which indicates the end of the paragraph. So that is a HTML command, and when you have title equals quote some text, it knows that what that means is don't display that, just have that ready to pop up in a little yellow box if the user moves their mouse over that picture. So, and then we have exactly the same, or very similar, for the player characters. We have set y equals 0 this time, because 0 indicates player characters. And then in this loop, which goes from 1 to C this time, C being the number of player characters, before this cell, we include hover text to get that text into X. And then we print it here with a div title equals quote, whatever's in X, end quote. So let's look quickly at how we generate X. So I have a little reminder here of what the variables mean. Z is the number of the character within their side, so in other words, their enemy 3 or their player character number 4 or whatever it may be. Then we have which side the character is on, 0 for player character, 1 for enemy. And then X is the text which is generated by this page. So if that comment's probably a little bit superfluous, I would say, but anyway, if y is equal to 0, in other words, if this is a player character we're dealing with, then we set x equal to $n square bracket $z n square bracket. And you may remember that $n is an array which has the names of the characters. So in other words, if it's a player character, then the first part of X is going to be their name, and if it's not a player character, if it's an enemy, then they're just going to be enemy 1 or enemy 3 or whatever it might be. You could, of course, generate names for the enemy, but that's the way that I've done it now. You could also have, if you had lots of different monster types, you probably wouldn't have enemy 2. You'd probably have sort of orc 2 or dragon 2 or whatever it might be. You could also set it up so that if there was only one enemy, it's not enemy 1 but just enemy or something like that. So, but anyway, I've done a very basic version of the option there. They're just called enemy 2, enemy 3. Then we set X is equal to X plus this set of characters which I haven't used before in a video, and that is ampersand, hashtag, or some people call it the hash sign. I guess that's probably the more technical term. Ampersand hash sign 1 3. Well, what does that mean? Well, what it means is carriage return. It's a line break. It's what happens when you press the enter or return key. It's one of these. And you might say, well, why are we going ampersand hashtag 1 3? Why don't we do the thing we've been using, which is this less than BR greater than? And the answer is that because, well, I don't know why it is, but it doesn't work in this context. I actually originally did code it by doing that, right? By adding the usual indication of a line break. But what that does, if you use those, it doesn't turn them into line breaks. It just keeps them as characters. So when you go to hover over the over a picture, you get a single line, and it says the name, say, and then it has less than BR greater than, and then it has the next bit. So this is another way of indicating a line break, and this particular way does work in the context of hover text. Unfortunately, I don't know why one works and not the other, but it just is the case that one works and not the other. Ampersand hash 1 3 indicates a line break. I have used another one before, which is ampersand NBSP, which indicates a non-breaking space. So it's a space like that, but not a line break. There's a lot of others, and I'll include a link to a page which has those in the description of this video, but you probably wouldn't need the others, I don't think, in most cases. But it might be interesting to have a look at, and I'll show you those. But anyway, just to bear in mind that within the context of hover text, it doesn't use that normal way of having line breaks. And similarly, I couldn't find a way of making some of the text bold. Well, I wanted to have the names in bold and the rest in plain text, and I couldn't find a way to make that happen. So if anyone knows how to do that, please let me know. Anyway, moving on. So that's what that is. That's just another way of saying the line break. And then we add to X, so we have the name, line break, then we have armor class, and A, of course, is the array that deals with armor class, so we have the relevant armor class, and then another line break, and then we add the attack bonus, which is plus some number, and another line break, and then finally damage 1 to $D, because $D stores the maximum damage, and thus far we're assuming that every damage is 1 to some number. Obviously, we would need to have slightly more complex code if we start having creatures that do 2d6 damage or 1d6 plus 2 or something like that. But for the moment, we're assuming that everything is 1 to 6 or 1 to 8 or something like that. and so we can do that way. So, having generated that, we'll have we will finish the include, and we'll just print all of that as the title of the div, which just means the mouse over or the mouse over text or hover text. And that is how you make the setup more informative without making it more cluttered and difficult to read. So I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you'll tune in next time when we will start to get on to the actual business of combat. So I hope to see you then.